Como ya les dije, el objetivo de hoy es terminar con esta lista de vocabulario, la lista 3262. Vamos a trabajar con el segundo lado de la hoja y también hablar de la gramática de esta lección también. Y ustedes ya tienen un formulario con él para escribir ideas grandes o ideas importantes de la lista. La hoja es de color rosado brillante y vamos a hablar de estas dos cosas hoy. Terminamos con la palabra 22, aventurero, el viernes, y vamos a continuar con el segundo lado. Vamos a practicar con el vocabulario, con la pronunciación, y también vamos a hablar un poco sobre la gramática. Pero la mayoría de la información de la gramática vamos a guardar hasta que hablamos de esta hoja rosada. Número 23, el segundo lado de la hoja. Repitan, por favor, ¿cómo eras en aquel entonces? En inglés. What were you like back then? And we had that neat and tidy little discussion about en aquel entonces on Friday, that the word aquel is really another factor that can be added to that chart about what we know about demonstrative adjectives. You have this book, that book that's kind of near me and kind of near you, and then it's that book way over there, which is far away from both of us. Well, aquel, aquella, aqueos, aquellas are words that we can use as demonstrative adjectives that give a relative location of an item, a relative location to the speaker. Now what's interesting is that in this lesson, we're using aquel to indicate distance, not physical distance, but distance in time. So that aquel, aquella, aqueos, aquellas can also be used to indicate distance in time. And so that's why we have en aquel entonces. We're talking about the then that's far away from us, or way back then. Okay, way back then. Repitan, por favor. Era muy juguetón. Siempre contaba chistes y hacía travesuras. En inglés, yes, I was very playful. I always told jokes and played tricks. What do we know about the person who is saying this? He's masculine. How do you know that, Eric? He used the masculine singular form of juguetón. Juguetón. If it were a female, she would have said, era muy juguetona. Okay, very good, Eric. Número 25, repitan por favor, ¿y tus amigos? En inglés? And your friends? Repitan por favor, ¿cómo eran? En inglés? What were they like? Repitan por favor, mi mejor amigo era muy buena gente. Me caía bien. En inglés, por favor. Okay, my best friend was really nice. I really liked him. Now that's not what those words really say, but that's the best English that goes along with them. Remember we talked about that term muy buena gente last week. Buena gente means good people. It means that they are a person who is genuinely good-hearted, and the best English is nice. A couple of generations ago, people would say, you know, they're good people, or he's good people. And we don't do that anymore in English, but a few generations ago they did use it. My grandparents used that terminology quite often. Now, What's interesting too is me caía bien. This comes from the word caer, and we're going to spend some more time talking about this when we get to our grammar information today. But here's a good example of how this term can be used. Notice that when you translated it, what did you say for me caía bien? What did you say on your vocab list for me caía bien? I really liked him. Literally, this says he fell on me well. Now that doesn't mean he physically fell on me. It means he struck me well. Not meaning he hit me, but he gave me a good impression. You understand what I'm getting at here? So this is not reflexive. It is not reciprocal. It is the he, she form of the verb with an indirect, a direct object pronoun. He struck me well. He fell well on me. I had a good impression of him. I really liked him. Now, a lot of you would like to use gustar when we talk about liking a person as a friend. Oh, I really like him. He's really nice. But in Spanish, this is the more common phrase for talking about liking a person. Me cae bien in the present tense. I really like him. Él me cae bien. Ella me cae bien. Ellos nos caen bien. We really like them. Okay? That's the present tense. We're using it in the imperfect tense because we're talking about childhood. We'll spend some more time with this when we get to our grammar. Okay? Eventos. Repitan, por favor. Eventos. En inglés? Events. You have to know left-hand column for those of you who can't find that. Repitan, por favor, el bautizo. En inglés? Ajá. Repitan, por favor, la enfermedad. En inglés? Sickness. Do you see this? Enfermo, sick. Enfermera, nurse. Right? Enfermedad. This is the noun. Sickness. Repitan, por favor, la partida. En inglés? Departure. Now this doesn't mean departure as in a departure for a trip. This means a permanent separation. Okay, a partida. Okay, departure. Repitan por favor la muerte. En inglés? Death. Repitan por favor el nacimiento. En inglés? Birth. Now we previously ran across this word at Christmas time when we were talking about the little nacimientos that you set up in the home. They're one of the little, we call them manger scenes, where you set up a little stable and you've got baby Jesus in the hay and you got the land, the shepherds and the sheep and the camels and the wise men, all that. In Spanish, that's called el nacimiento because it is a picture of Christ's birth. Okay, so that's why it's called, it has that name. El nacimiento, the related verb is the verb nacer. Nacer. Repitan, por favor, el recuerdo. El recuerdo. En inglés? Memory. Now, I want to tell you too that recuerdo has another meaning. It can mean, in other contexts, it can mean souvenir. What's the connection between memory and souvenir? Tell your partner. What's the connection between memory and souvenir? Okay, who would like to tell all of us what's the connection between memory and souvenir? Is Hannah the only one who ever wants to be cool like this? Okay, Sarah, you be cool this time. Okay, it is a physical representation of a memory of where you got it from. It's designed to help you remember something, to create a memory, or to bring back memories. What a cool connection, right? El recuerdo in Spanish can be both words. I love that. Maybe it's just because I'm a word nerd. Okay, repitan por favor para hablar de una reacción. Now we're going to go over these four terms, or these four phrases, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask it now so you can be thinking about it as we repeat these phrases. Some of you who are brilliant and who have already filled out your whole list already probably can anticipate the question I'm going to ask, and you already know the answer. Here's the question. There are two questions. Have we ever done anything like this before? And if we did, when did we do that? Now, the fact that I asked the follow-up question tells you that the answer to the first question is probably... Okay, and your goal is to figure out when we did it. Repitan, por favor, ¿cómo te sentiste? Cuando supiste lo de Gloria y Sergio. En inglés. Yeah, how did you feel when you found out about Gloria and Sergio? Now, in English, we didn't do anything with that lo in the sentence, okay? If we were to transliterate, this would be, how did you feel when you found out about Gloria and Sergio? When you found out the dirt about Gloria and Sergio, or you found out the news, or the stuff, or the big thing that there is to know about Gloria and Sergio. That lo is in there and stands for whatever it is there is to know about Gloria and Sergio. Now, we don't translate that when we go to English. We just say, how'd you feel when you found out about Gloria and Sergio? But in Spanish, we need to put that lo in there to represent the stuff that there is to know. That's why it's masculine and singular, because it doesn't represent a particular noun. It represents a collection of ideas. Okay? 35. Repitan, por favor, cuando oí la noticia, no lo quise creer. En inglés? Okay, when I heard the news, the piece of news, I didn't want to believe it. Now, that, I understand why you translated it that way. And maybe your book even translates it, though, does it? Your book translates it that way? But querer, when we change it to the preterite and make it negative, really changes its meaning to refuse. So, this is when I heard the news, I refused to believe it. Now, do you see how I didn't want to and I refused are related? Okay. Now, best English is I didn't want to believe it. That is the best English. But keep in mind that querer in the preterite, when negative, well, querer in the preterite is going to change its meaning. But when negative, it takes it one step further. We're going to be talking about that again in a couple of minutes. Repitan, por favor, cuando me enteré, no lo pude creer. En inglés. When I found out, I couldn't believe it. Okay. Enterarse literally means to inform oneself. To inform oneself. So when I found out, when I became informed, when I found out, I couldn't believe it. Repitan, por favor, me pareció fenomenal. In English? I thought it was great. I thought it was phenomenal. It seemed phenomenal to me is the transliteration of that phrase. It seemed phenomenal to me. I thought it was great. I thought it was phenomenal. Now, I want you to answer my question. Now, have we ever done anything like this last set of four before? Yes, okay, the answer is still yes, that's good. Tell your partner when we did this previously. Earlier this school year. She wasn't here yet. You might not have been here yet, I don't know. I can't remember. Okay, Sydney, do you know? Okay, Sydney, when did we do this before? Yeah, when we talked about how you felt when you lost or won an athletic competition, or how you felt when somebody got hurt. Do you remember that now? Okay, and we used the preterite. Explain to me again why we use the preterite in that situation. Usually when we talk about feelings in the past, we use the imperfect. But why, under these circumstances, do we use the preterite? Exactly, because it happened at a specific time. It is a reaction to another event. If the other event doesn't occur, then your reaction doesn't occur. So we know exactly what caused it. We know when it happened. And so it's a reaction to another event. Now, we're going to go on to this grammar summary. And when we get to talking about emotional reactions, I didn't leave space for it, but we're going to talk about other expressions, or expressions that we remember. And I haven't looked at the text recently, so I'm not really sure. Maybe it's already in the text, and I'm just, is it in there? You don't know. Okay. You don't know. Okay. It's possible that what I'm referring to, the verbs that we used back in chapter 3, I think, it's possible that those verbs are included in this lesson. If they aren't, we're going to add them back in, because we already know how to do this in some other ways already. So if you will, this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to spend 3 or 4 minutes comparing your note sheet to your partners. Now, if you don't have it filled out, don't sit there and copy your partners, because that's not educational for you. Okay? You need to take your own notes for it to have them mean anything to you. But I want you to talk to one another for 2 or 3 minutes, and I want you to decide what questions you have about this material, so that when we get there, we can move forward. I don't have to lecture about things that you already understand, but I can just answer questions about the things you don't understand. While you're talking about this, I'm going to hand back papers to you. And remind me that I need all of you to answer a question for me before the end of the hour. Just remind me that. Don't let me let you out of here without answering my question. Okay? Go, talk. I'm going to return papers. One other thing about as I get to returning the compositions to you, remember that I had one of our pre-interns read them first, and she wrote remarks. She wrote them on a yellow sheet of paper. Anything that's on your composition that's in pencil is the pre-intern's remarks, Miss Parks' remarks. Anything that's in red are my remarks. Now, I disagreed with some of the things that she wrote, and so I just let you know that. I wrote you a note, I crossed it out, or whatever. But I also, and she consistently used the comment, nice use of the reflexive. And that is incorrect terminology. It was nice use of the reciprocal. Right, it was reciprocal, not reflexive here. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you look at these comments. Keep going, go back to your discussion. It is an irregular stem pattern. It's not a step changer. It's a super irregular. As you peak. Come on. Come on. Stick with them. Because that's in the credit, you're just running in the other side.
I don't know. Wait. You know, worst choice, but
no, it just means that nobody else is business until you've had an opportunity to read it. No. Okay, we're going to come back. We're going to come back in just a second here to talk about this grammar. But I'm handing out some quarter sheets that I want you to use to answer a question I have for you. If you are a senior, you're not going to answer this question because the answer is going to be obvious. Okay? But if you are something other than a senior, I need you to answer this question on this sheet of paper, this quarter sheet. You're not going to write your name on this quarter sheet because I don't want you to be worried about what I think. It won't affect me, even if I knew who you were, it wouldn't affect me. But I want you to feel comfortable in writing your answer. All right? You're going to write a one-word answer. The one word in your set of possibilities are yes, no, and maybe. Okay? Yes, no, and maybe. We're trying to do a longitudinal study and figure out kind of how many sections of what level courses we need for next year and what languages. So what I'd like you to put on this paper is an answer to the question, are you considering going on to Spanish for next year? So the answer is either yes, no, or maybe, and it doesn't matter who you are. Okay, that's why you don't need to put your name on that. All I'm interested in looking at are numbers, because we're trying to make a decision about how we split me up for next year. How they split my time for next year. So we want to kind of get an edge on it. So you're writing an answer to that question. If you're a senior, of course, you're going to be somewhere else doing more exciting things than being in high school. So that doesn't matter. Okay, if you would, my friend Kaylee, because she has no stake in it, will come on and pick that up from you. And we're going to continue and talk about this grammar. Now the first topic on the grammar for this chapter, remember we're approaching this a little bit differently. This time I want you to get into the habit of looking at grammar for yourself, figuring it out on your own, not needing the teacher to explain everything to you, preloading your memory with information, but then we just need to adjust in some way. Alright, so the first topic here was the imperfect tense of ser and haber. The real critical issue here, and I gave you room to write down the difference between them. Hopefully you wrote that in your own words and not in just copying the textbook down, but that you wrote it out in your own words, and that you wrote out the imperfect tense forms of ser, and you wrote down the imperfect tense forms of haber for this application. And notice I did not give you the same format to put that in that I did for ser, and then some sample sentences. Now, in essence, I would like for somebody to be able to explain to all of us what's the difference between the verb ser and haber, and you can couch it in the imperfect tense if you want, because that's what we're discussing in this lesson. But in fact, this is the difference between ser and haber, no matter what tense you're dealing in. Who wants to be brave enough to explain? Who wants to be the risk taker today? Can't be on Haley's because she's always doing it. I want somebody else to be a risk taker today and explain to all of us what the difference between ser and haber is. Macaulay?
Ser is used to describe someone, like what someone was like, and then haber is to describe what there was, or an object that was.
Okay, do you get it? Does that make sense to you? Could you choose between ser and haber? Okay. Now, if I, honestly, maybe it's because I'm on the other end of it, and I know that I'm going to give you a quiz, and I'm going to give you some exercises where you're going to blow it. I would like a little more definite explanation. I don't like the word describe in here, because we don't ever use haber to describe. And I'm confused by that. I don't want you to be confused by that. We do use ser to describe the characteristics of a person or an object or a place. But we don't use haber to describe. We only use haber to state what there is or what there was. Now I know that's what she meant, but the word choice could be confusing. In other words, we only use haber to point out what is there in a place, in a situation. Okay, so for example, if we're looking, and you use these when you were describing your bedroom, when you were describing the house, we're going back to previous lessons. You said, in my bedroom there is. When you say there is, you're just saying it exists. And so you're going to use haber. But when you want to say the bed is big and comfortable, then you have to use ser, because you are describing what that thing is like. So now we're looking at this in terms of the imperfect tense, because one of our goals is to be able to describe people and objects in the past. If we are truly describing people or things, the way they looked, we are going to use Sayer. But if we're just saying that a person or a thing existed, then we have to use aber. Okay. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Now, tell me why you have a chart for Sayer and you don't have a chart for aber. Sayer is irregular. Aber is regular, but that's not why you have a chart for Sayer and you don't have a chart for aber. Ready?
Because you don't use aber to describe a person.
You don't, but that's not why you don't have a chart. Eric, I don't like the way you described it. It isn't the yo form. It's the LA it was said form. Now, in the imperfect, the yo form and the LA it was said form are identical, and that's where your confusion came in. But remember, in the present tense, you only use I. In the imperfect tense, you only use abia. There was or there were. That's it. You're only using one form. I know. In the margin, I wrote the imperfect tense forms of aber. Is to see if I could trip you up and get you to write all six. Or get you to write abia and abian, which a lot of students try to do. They try to make it plural. But we don't. We only use abia. Now, believe it or not, you can also use this in the predicate. This is an aside. You're not going to need to know this for a quiz or a test. You aren't going to get to this until next year, but because you're so cool, I think you can handle it. There is this impersonal form that you can use in the predicate. Ubo. H-U-B-O. It's the predicate tense equivalent of I in abia. But ubo means there took place. So if you would say, hubo una tormenta de nieve, there was a snowstorm. Hubo una tormenta eléctrica, there was a thunderstorm. Okay, hubo un accidente, there was an accident. Meaning, not that the accident existed, but the accident took place. You understand what I'm getting at? So in the predicate, you can use this verb too, just to indicate that something took place. Hubo un concierto anoche. There was a concert last night. It took place. But it's over with now. Okay? That's a little extra. Just because you're cool, I wanted to give you extra today. Okay. Are there questions about Sayer and aber? It's not difficult if you understand the basic inherent meaning in these two verbs and their basic inherent application. Questions. Did you write anything out in the margin as questions for the old hag? Okay, so let's go on and let's talk about the predicate with mental and emotional states. There are several verbs that are used to describe reactions and changes in mental or emotional states that occurred at a specific point of time in the past. To express these ideas, we conjugate the verbs in the predicate. And we discussed a few minutes ago about why we conjugate them in the predicate. And that's because they indicate a reaction to another event. And we know when that reaction began because we know that it is the reaction to an event. Okay, now, 5 verbs that are commonly used to express these ideas are, give me one, please, Avery. Ponerse. Give me a second one, please, Hope. Sentirse. Give me another one, please, Blake. Querer. Give me another one, please, Rafael. Estar. Okay, give me another one, please, Maddie. Saber. Is that 5? Yes, that's 5. Now I want you to know that you also know another one, which is dar. Dar. And we're going to talk about that again in just a few minutes. So your textbook only addresses these 5, and they're they have different applications. Dar has yet another application. So we're going to talk about that again in just a minute. Now, blank and blank change their meanings slightly in the preterite. Which two change their meaning slightly in the preterite? Tomas? Querer and saber. Change their meanings slightly in the preterite. In the preterite, querer means what? Leanne? Yeah, to have the urge to do something. Felt like doing something. Like, I felt like crying, remember? Okay? It can also mean to try to, or to attempt to do something. Does that make sense to you, to have the urge to do something? So you try to do it, you attempt to do it? Okay. What this doesn't, oh, it does say, it says, what isn't very clear in your textbook is that when it is negative in the preterite, it means to refuse to. So, no querer in the preterite means to refuse to do something, or as we saw in our vocabulary list, I didn't want to do something, meaning I balked at doing it. I dragged my feet. I refused to do it. Saber, in the preterite, saber means to find something out. Does that make sense to you? Saber, which means to know. If you put it in the present, if you put it in the imperfect, somebody knew something that's over long term. But remember, in the preterite, it talks about events that happened and were over with. If you take saber and put it in the preterite, all of a sudden it happened, right? Does that make sense to you that it means to find out? It should make sense to you. But in the preterite, saber means found out, because it's an action that happened at a specific point in time. So it takes that verb saber, which means to know, and makes it into an immediate action. Bam, found out. It marks the beginning of that event. Alright. Then, the conjugated forms of these 5 verbs in the preterite are, I hope that you practiced with that. Querer and saber are members of that group that I call the irregular stem preterites. I believe that Mrs. Melendez calls them super irregular preterites. But these are the ones that have a stem that is just really strange. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why it changes, it just does. And it doesn't change according to a predictable pattern, like these verbs may do in the present tense. They just have strange stems. Now remember that that particular set of verbs also has a blended set of endings. If you look at the endings in the textbook, or if you took notes, great for you. If you look at that blend, those forms of querer and saber in your textbook, you'll see that it's a blended set of endings. The yo form and the la usted form have AR verb endings, even though these 2 verbs are ER verbs. And the other forms have ER-IR endings, because they belong to that set of irregular stem preterites. And notice, too, that they don't have accent marks, because they are irregular. Now, I want to take a moment or two, and remember a star belongs to that set too. A star is a part of that set of irregular stem preterites. I want to take a few minutes out and just talk about the verb dar. Back in the chapter where we dealt with reactions to the sporting events or getting hurt, we also learned to use the verb dar to state a reaction. Okay, so I want to add that to your notes because you already know it. You already know it. You already know it. You already know it. And I just want you to bring it back. This is another way to use to state a reaction. So over here I've just written to state a reaction. And then on this side of our notes form, in the body, we're going to use remember to use an indirect object pronoun. That's what IOP stands for, indirect object pronoun, plus a form of dar in the preterite. Now we're doing this in the preterite because we're talking about a reaction to an event. Okay? So a form of dar preterite, a form of dar in the preterite, and then after it, we're going to use a noun. Now that's the thing that makes this verb different. If you use ponerse is reflexive and you use an adjective. Me puse enojada, me puse enferma, me puse alegre, me puse triste. With ponerse, you use, that is a reflexive verb, that you use an adjective after. But, if you are going to use dar, it is not reflexive. You're using an indirect object pronoun, then the form of dar in the preterite, and a noun. So you can't say, please stay here. You have to use what? Tristeza. Thank you very much. Okay? You can't say alegre. You have to use alegría. You have to use the noun here. Same emotion, but you have to use the noun. So, look back to your notes. I believe it was in chapter 3. Is that where we talked about injuries? Let me look, just to be sure. Because I don't want to give you bad information. No. It's chapter 4. I'm sorry. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is where you learn this information. I gave you an extra sheet with notes at the top. I think you'll remember that. You should go back through your notes and try to find it. You're going to use an indirect object pronoun plus a form of dar in the preterite plus a noun. So, it's like me, di, tristeza. Me dio, tristeza. Now why is it dio? It gave me. Okay, it's typically going to be dio. Because we say, it gave me sadness. Most of the time, it's going to be dio here. Because the situation did this to me. The situation gave this to me. Okay? So it could be me, te, le, nos, os, lace, dio, tristeza, alegría, other nouns that describe emotional reaction. If there were multiple events, could be. Okay? Yeah, but this is a verb. And remember, this is a verb ending. This is not, doesn't have to agree in number and gender. This is a verb. Verbs don't agree in gender. They only agree with the subject. Okay? Other questions about this? Okay. Now, I probably have exhausted you today. If I were you, I'd be exhausted. Okay, I'm exhausted just from talking. I want us to save the spelling changing verbs in the preterite for tomorrow because I don't want to shortchange the discussion about caer, caerse, and caer plus an indirect object pronoun. I don't want that to get messed up in your head. But for homework tonight, I want you to do activities, ladies, please. Activities 12 through 16 in the packet. That really is about vocabulary. Except that exercise 15 gives you an opportunity to talk about emotional reactions. Okay? Gives you that opportunity to talk about emotional reactions. Refer to this note sheet to help you make some good emotional reactions. You're doing 12 through 16 in your packet. You can get started right now. You have a couple minutes before the announcements come on. So get busy and do those activities. No, that was it. That was it. Thank you. You do not. You do not. Yes, Lola. Well, I just don't know how you feel. That's the thing. I don't want to load you up. That's why I didn't. I just want to get it worried about it. And when you have a concussion, the stress, there was no way I would do that. So they did this in 30 minutes in a classroom. I was out of the classroom. They had the assignments. They could use their vocab list and their resources, and they just sat down and wrote. So when you feel like in that 30 minutes, and you feel like you're no less than 1 hour, then go ahead and sit down and write it. Okay, that real, but you make that choice. I know that you'll do it when you need to, and it will be okay. Thursday during class? Yes, you may. How about are you going to the committee for let me know tomorrow. If you need a pass, I'll write this down tomorrow. Okay? Alright, yes, ma'am.
I was sick all last week.
Good, we provide for it.
I had a virus that actually made my eye bleed.
28 of students competed in the state decade conference over the weekend. Congratulations to both Grace, Mr. Rada, Gary Garborough, Kevin Style, and Elena Shaker for earning overall final medal in their event. Maggie McCall and Allie Thompson earned medals for their role play and Tony Mellon another medal for the occupational exam. Finally, Lucas Walton was selected to participate in the Senior Management Institute at the International Conference in Florida in April. Good job. If you're planning on taking the AP exam, any AP exam, sign up to become a member. The exams will be in May, but the deadline to sign up is at the end of this month, March 26th. So see Dr. Ross if you have any questions. Attention seniors, your senior salutes for the yearbook are due April 1st. If your parents would like to buy a senior salute for you, the deadline is approaching. All information needs to be turned in to Mr. Scrope. If you have any questions, please be heard. Robotics did a great job this weekend, earning the All-Star Rookie Award. Great job.
All-Star Rookie, yeah.
Sports. 14 men and women competed at the Powerlifting State Championships. There were over 1,200 competitors, and your Redskins came away with tremendous success. Brendan McDonald placed 10th, Tyler Pursley placed 7th, Michaela Barnhart placed 6th, Trevor Farrell placed 4th, Ty Bremer placed 3rd, Kennedy Shive placed 3rd, Peter Frey placed 2nd, Bree Davies placed 2nd, Mackenzie Earl placed 2nd, and Demas Johnson and Jacob Fry both came away as state champions. Great job. Women's team placed 4th overall, and the men's JV team were state runner-ups.
Nice.
Congratulations to Jacob Fry as he set a new state record in the powerlifting in the 145-pound weight class by pulling 435 pounds in the deadlift. Good job.
Wow.
Varsity golf practice is canceled for today.